Welcome back, YouTube, to another episode of 10 with Travis, where we take 10 minutes a day to just try to be better than we were today than we were yesterday. So today we're going to close out the book of Galatians, and Paul's really been hammering hard on righteousness by grace and nothing with the law. And it's almost seemed to get redundant a little bit, but that's just something that's a good point for our lives, that these big key core concepts that we talk about and that we hear, we need to make them redundant. We need them to be rooted deeply into our faith. We need to be able to recite these things whenever an obstacle comes, and we just need to know it as truth and begin to just operate in that in our lives. So chapter 6 will come in discussing kind of three sections of that chapter, which we'll probably only talk about the first two, and that's sharing in each other's burdens, giving and doing good, and then glory only in the cross. So before Paul has his short goodbye to Galatians, those three are in there, but we'll probably only talk about the first two today. So for this video though, I pray that God will give you exactly what you need and you have open ears as well as just a clear mind. A lot of times I pray for myself that I'm able to just wipe away all the worldly things in my mind and that I only have the mind of Christ, and I pray that and speak that on you today. So the first section is verses 1 through 5, and verse 1 says, "Brethren, if a man is overtaken in any trespass, you who are spiritual, restore such a one in a spirit of gentleness, considering yourself, lest you also be tempted." So this is something I don't think a lot of believers do, and that's having, as the exact word said, a spirit of gentleness. So when we correct or we try to help people, we really need to have a spirit of gentleness. And yes, you should have that with everybody, but this is actually talking about someone that didn't put it on themselves. So again, a lot of times we think of, oh, well, that person, keeps making the same mistake, or, I don't want to keep feeding into what they're doing. The word overtaken here actually means someone that is overtaken by surprise. So something that they didn't see coming, just something out of the blue. So again, that just kind of reaffirms to us that, hey, when these things happen to people in the world, we need to be able to jump in and have action on them, because it is something that was overtaking them and it was by surprise. So the other thing that this verse mentions is restore. So it says, restore such a one in a spirit of gentleness. So what restore actually means here in the Greek is setting back or placing back a broken bone. So that's the kind of mindset that Paul was wanting us to have on the restoration, in even just the restoration process. So if you think about a broken bone, that's something that needs to have time to heal. It needs to have a natural progression in your body. If you break your arm, for example, it's not going to be unbroken overnight. It's going to take a period of time, and that's how it is for us in our lives with other people. They may have, being overtaken by a trespass. We need to give them time to have that spiritual restoration in their life. The other thing about a broken bone is a lot of times we put a cast on it. So us as believers, it says, you who are spiritual, restore such a one in a spirit of gentleness. We are the cast. So we are the ones that have to stay with them until we know that restoration process is finished. And a lot of times we start there at the beginning and we leave too soon, and then therefore it's not able to be mended how it needs to be. So the rest of verse 2 through 5 just speaks about our willingness to be able to do that. And it also speaks about that we don't think we're too good to do that. So, it just wants us to have a humble spirit, and also reminds us that, again, the word overtaken is surprise. Things happen to us by surprise. So we want to keep that in mind, that we're not too good or too above some of these things, that, life happens to us all, and we need to make sure that we're in a spirit of gentleness toward everybody. So verses 6 through 10 talk about being generous and being good. So verse 6 gives us some insight and a challenge to our giving. So it says, "Let him who is taught the word share in all good things with him who teaches." So now this might get a little awkward, and you sometimes lose people when you talk about this, but I've just always been one that wants to share the word and teach the word unapologetically, and the only time I will apologize is when I'm proven wrong. which will happen, right? We're all in a growing stage, but we try to read, study, hear from God, so we kind of know what these words mean. So what this verse means is you should give to your pastor. You should give to your church. You should even give to your life group or your connect group leader. And yes, you should give to people like myself that share the gospel, want to make content and things like that. Now, when I say to share to some of these people, we're talking about people that consistently feed you, right? You shouldn't just watch one YouTube video of mine and start wanting to sow into me. No, it's somebody that is in your life that continues to teach you. Like a pastor would be a great example. So you need to be giving to your church and giving to your pastor. And the reason for that is God has called certain people on earth to be part of the natural kind of system of business. So you're working as an accountant, which I do. Not really an accountant, but in the accounting and finance department. But working as an accountant, a doctor, a school bus driver. Those things are necessary, and God calls people to those things, and that's where their ministry is, inside of there, while they make their money doing that. But then there's other people that are called to just doing the ministry. So a pastor, someone like that, right? Someone that is an evangelist and goes out to different nations. They need to be supported, and this is what Paul's talking about here. And he's making note to tell you all and to tell us, hey, we need to be able to share in all good things with him who teaches. So another example of that is it's no real different than paying someone to maintain your yard. So you pay someone to maintain your yard because it gives you something positive, a nice yard. You don't have to do it. They may be better at yard work than you. So there's benefits to that. And it's the same here, right? Your pastor should be benefiting you. Your connect group leader should be benefiting you. And that's why you sow into those. So the next verse says, do not be deceived. God is not mocked. For what a man sows, he reaps. So if you sow into these things, he says you're going to reap a harvest. So that's just where the level of faith comes, right? The first instance is like, it feels really weird sowing into this stuff. But that's why he puts that verse right next after it, is to let you know that as you sow, you will reap. But the converse to that is he says in the next verse, and I'll just read verses 8 through 10, for he who sows to his flesh will of the flesh reap corruption. But he who sows to the Spirit will of the Spirit reap everlasting life. And let us not grow weary while doing good, for in due season we shall reap if we do not lose heart. Therefore, as we have opportunity, let us do good to all, especially to those who are the household of faith. So real quick, how many of us are sowing into fleshly things and not spiritual things? So you sow into, going to sporting events, or you sow into the new phone or these vacations, and you're not sowing into spiritual things. That's not how God has it set up. He wants you to sow into spiritual things as well as some of those things that bring joy and bring happiness to your family and all that. So not saying those things are wrong, and we probably have some huge givers that sow into those things and have these material things added on to them. And if you are one of those, please comment below and let us know, because we want to give God an amen, because we do here believe at the Radical Wealth Network for prosperity, and that God delights in the prosperity of his children, which it does say in Psalm. So the other caveat to this is just not losing heart. So that verse was in there, and let us not grow weary while doing good, for in due season we shall reap if we do not lose heart. So losing heart isn't having a bad day or a disbelieving day. It's really just completely saying, I don't believe this anymore. I've sowed, haven't reaped. God, I don't see it. I don't believe in you. And this is just encouraging for us to continue to have that faith, which is kind of the season we're in right now, from 2023 to 2024, which now it's getting into the fourth quarter of 2024. We've made well under half of what we did in 2023, but we sowed a lot of seeds in 2023. So we are waiting for God to bring that harvest to us at the perfect time, because that's the thing about seed time and harvest. There's seed time and harvest, and people forget about the time, but you need to sow seeds when you don't need the harvest. So when you need the harvest, you've had the seeds sown. So that does it for us today. We'll be back tomorrow morning at 5:30 a.m. Have a blessed day, and I pray that this blessed you.